Hey everybody, glad you could join me. Tonight we're going to do the first little bit of the Lost Lemon Creek mine. We're going to learn how a little bit of this yellow stuff can just wreak havoc on, well, everything really. I'm not going to spend too much time talking to you right now because we already went through this on the other video, and I'll put that link in the description below. Okay? So let's start off with the author's note. Let's see. Okay, so solving a historical mystery from fragmentary evidence that has survived for more than a century and a half is a daunting task. Oh, shit. Many of the sources of the Lost Lemon Mine stories are little more than small clipped fragments of old newspapers, periodicals, similar to the recipes you'd find in your grandmother's scrapbook. The essential recipe is preserved itself, but often the source and date of publication are unknown. Pinpointing the locations of events mentioned in these accounts is also difficult, and in some cases impossible. Many places have changed over the last 150 years. In 1870, what was in 1870? Do you remember? I do. We had a horse, a butter churner, there was fire. It was still new, but it was in every household. Sometimes it was your whole household that was fire. Anyways, getting off topic. Let's start again. Pinpointing the locations of events mentioned in these accounts is also difficult and, in some cases, impossible. Many place names have changed over the last 150 years. In 1870, the local name of a particular spot may have been Buffalo Wallow Creek, but as there have been no buffalo on the prairies for more than 100 years, no one alive today would know that Willow Creek and Buffalo Wallow Creek are in fact the same place. Even the names of people vary with the storyteller. A prospector might have been known as Dancing Bill in one town, but if he left in a hurry after holding up a local bank, he might have called himself Yeast Cake Will. So he was very fluffy and stank. Anyways, would have called himself Yeast Cake Will in the next town. There is no way of knowing if names that seem to indicate two individuals actually refer to one person, in fact. For a better understanding of this complex mystery, I have taken, not me, the author, has taken several liberties to impose some order on the narrative. In most cases, the author has standardized the spelling of the names of the central characters for clarity, and for the author of each account seems to use a different spelling. References to First Nations people have been left in their original form in quoted material in order to preserve the accuracy and flavor of the historical account, and I intend no respect. That's the author. I intend no respect. Me, I'm just going to be as offensive as I possibly fucking can. That's not true. Totally not true. So now we're on to the prologue. So we'll get through the prologue tonight. We'll get through the introduction, which is, it's not lengthy, but it's going to be a good bedtime story. Alright, prologue. Here we go. A fortune in gold. Lemon looked at the sleeping form of his prospecting partner Blackjack. Sitting alone in the darkness and staring into the blazing campfire made a man think about his situation in life. For years he had endured the numbering winters, the black flies, the mosquitoes, eaten rotten grub, and slept in wet clothes. It was more than any man should have to endure. Now here he was, finally, within his grasp, a fortune of gold. Warm beds, women, the life he had always dreamed of. The more he thought of it, the more he wondered why he should share all this bounty with Blackjack. Yeah, fuck him. It was true that they had a valid grub stake agreement filled with a traitor, so if he tried to cut old Blackjack out of the game, it was sure to go badly for him. Folks have been strung up for welshing on it. Folks have had being strung up for welshing on an agreement, but still, the longer he gazed into the fire and watched the sparks ascend into the darkness of the black spruce, the surer he was of what he had to do. Silently, he made his way to the heavy axe, conveniently hacked into a nearby spruce stump. This would be much simpler than trying to negotiate with Black Jack, who was quick to take offense and blazing fast with his gun. Raising the heavy axe, he looked at the slumbering man one more time. This was no time to change his mind. Swinging the steel with all his strength, he buried the axe's head. Let's just go on to the introduction. We don't want the whole thing going on right now. The legend of the Lost Lemon Mine has all the requisite ingredients of every great story of the Old West. Let's see, it has murder, massacres, gunfighters, bushwhackers, and a fortune in gold lost for over 100 years. Well, that being said, given the mass appeal of hidden treasures and unsolved mysteries, it is hardly surprising that the Lost Lemon Mine has been the subject of so much speculation. Many short stories and articles about the mine have appeared over the last 140 years. But while these accounts make for interesting reading, sadly, none tell the actual complete story. It's not surprising, though. The stories that have survived the years are twisted, confused, convoluted. Told and retold around countless campfires, the tales of the Lost Lemon Mine took on a life of their own. So, at that point, they were no longer bound by any constraints of fact or circumstance. Each encounter has undergone a subtle metamorphosis with each telling, emerging as part of the folklore that survives today. And I'm just going to let you know that I'm like ad-libbing to this story. I've read it already a couple of times, this part, so you're going to get my take on it. And yeah. So, many of the stories of the Lost Lemon Mine may have been grouped into several categories. The best known are those usually seen in print. Yes, many books online, Wikipedia is very short, still interesting nonetheless. Prospectors tell of Lemon and his partner discovering gold somewhere in the Rocky Mountains, usually in a pit or mine, adit, whatever. Another group of tales presented a much darker picture of mysterious Lemon describing murder and robbery on the lonely trails of the goldfields. The desperado narratives are largely unknown to the reading public over the last century, have languished in private collections and historical archives of the West. So, if there were actual accounts, they're probably out there. A third group focuses on the native peoples. It seems that the same individuals are mentioned again and again in every version of this story. These tales tell of stolen gold and of a stony boy who became obsessed with Lemon's treasure over a century ago and spent most of his life searching for the lost El Dorado. Rounding out the available material in the Lost Lemon Mine is biographical information concerning Lemon and the other characters in this historical puzzle. And it is a puzzle, as you'll come to learn. The mystery of the Lost Lemon Mine was born in the frontier goldfields. Its principal characters, the enigmatic Lemon and Blackjack, were typical of the prospectors who struggled against the wilderness, bone-numbing cold, starvation, and each other in their quest for golden wealth. While many locations have been suggested as the possible site of the Lost Lemon Mine, several accounts seem to point toward the goldfields located on Wild Horse Creek near Fort Steele, BC. Remember that, Wild Horse Creek, Fort Steele, BC. Bring your shovel, bring your pans, bring some mustard, you'll be rich. The Wild Horse Creek gold rush began in 1864, following Joe Finlay, his discovery of gold in a small stream about 50 miles north of the British Columbia-Montana border in the fall of 1863. So that's Alberta. This stream, a tributary of the Kootenay River, which flows here, is known today as Finlay Creek. Word of the gold strike spread into the United States while Finlay showed his golden nuggets to John Linklater. John Linklater. That's a terrible name at best. He was a trader at the Tobacco Plains, Montana trading post. The news soon filtered through the smoky dance halls and mining camps south of the border, and miners headed north to take their chances in the new gold rush. A lot of people taking risks. Excuse me. Two parties of prospectors headed north of Finlay Creek to the junction of the Kootenay and St. Mary rivers. So again, we're talking southern Alberta, northern Montana. Bob Dorr, an Englishman leading a party of 6 men, was the first to get underway. A couple of days later, on March 17th, 1864, Jack Fisher followed with a group of 15 prospectors. Neither group knew exactly where Finlay had made his strike, yet remarkably, after traveling through this rugged country for 400 miles, both groups ended up camping on the same river only a few hundred yards apart. Who'd have thunk? As the snow was still too deep to prospect in earnest, the miners passed the time panning for gold at a nearby creek. Dorr's group, Bob Dorr, the Englishman, Dorr's group worked at the mouth of the creek, found color, a miner's term for speck of gold, but nothing spectacular. Yeah, that's my whole prospecting experience so far. Meanwhile, well, no, we found a nugget, so that's good. Meanwhile, Fisher and 2 of his men pushed on about 5 miles up a steep-sided canyon. When they reached a wide, flat gravel bar, they decided, hell, let's test this. So they shoveled out the gravel, panned it out, and they were rewarded with tons of free gold. Large quantities, probably nuggets, I'm sure. You know how it's like glacial activity and rivers flowing, you got ice chunks, other stuff obstructing, water goes around, creates these benches, you know. So when Fisher held up that first pan to show the gold to Pat Quirk and Ike Stevens, I guess they were part of the prospecting group, the men's yells and yahoos of delight echoed up and down the valley. The 3 were so excited that they shoveled up and panned until dark, without even stopping to eat. So began the golden bonanza of the Wild Horse Creek. Before it was over, an incredible 48 tons of the yellow metal were pulled up from its frigid gravel. Sweet gold! Or something like that. The wealth that came out of some of the claims was staggering. The largest nugget found at Wild Horse Creek weighed 37 ounces and was pure gold. Pure. Bob Dorr, using little more than a bowie knife and an axe, managed to fashion himself a crude wheelbarrow. Even with these primitive tools, with the help of 4 men, he was able to take out $7,000 a day in gold. God. It's discouraging. I almost don't want to read this story anymore. This at a time when the average wage for miners working in the damp and dirty mine shafts at the Caribou was $8 to $10 per day. Dorr's workings paid out more in a week than most men could earn in a lifetime. In 3 years, his company made $521,700. There are 2 basic types of gold mining. There's hard rock and placer. Hard rock mining refers to the underground techniques that remove gold found in vein deposits, frequently in veins of quartz, anything with sulfides. You find it in galena, you'll find it in... There's... even learned that there could be gold in some calcite veins and stuff like that. So I can double check that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. And in BC and the Yukon, gold is often found in association with quartz veins. Other minerals that may also contain gold are iron pyrites, commonly called fool's gold, and an ore of lead called galena, which we just talked about there. Hard rock mining usually requires a specialized mining tool or equipment and modern processing mills to separate gold from waste rock. This is very technical, this part. Placer mining techniques were commonly used during the 19th century British Columbia gold rushes. A placer, pronounced placer, here I'll show you, that's how it's pronounced. For all of you out there that pronounce it placer, that's placer. is a deposit of sand or gravel containing particles of gold. Wood rocks containing gold erode. Natural forces like frost, wind, and water break up the material, carry it away, it goes down, sticks to the inside bend. We all know that. You pan it out, you're discouraged most of the time. When this sediment itself is carried into rivers and streams, and because gold is about 19 times denser than water, it sinks and settles. That being said, since I've been learning how to read creeks and read rivers, and it shows like inside bend with lots of rocks and stuff like that. As you know, like white foam in a water, when all that oxygen is in there, it becomes a low pressure zone. You can't float. Nothing can float. So everything drops. That's one way of looking at it. There's other ways too, like it'll just drop naturally, even if you don't see that white water and your river or creek is flowing, and you have like a big something, whatever, under the water, and the water does this, and it sort of slows down behind it. As soon as it slows down, it creates that low pressure zone. Everything drops. Fishing weights, keys, iron, stone, just gold, everything. This settling tends to concentrate the gold in certain sand or gravel bars, and this sorting action of the streams makes placer mining possible. In its basic form, placer mining is nothing more than a prospector panning for gold. A miner shovels gravel into a pan, washes it by swirling the water around. This flushes out the light material, allows the gold to settle to the bottom. Well, this sounds easy. It's relatively, in its reality, it's backbreaking work, for sure. Unless a miner had a lot of luck and found a rich piece of ground, he could shovel tons of gravel without finding even a speck of color. That's more true than not. In itself, a speck of color may only be worth 1/100th part of a cent, but it is a clue that may indicate richer gravels just upstream or deeper in the sandbar. Sometimes the gold-bearing gravels were buried under a layer of overburden, and the shaft had to be sunk. The simple mines that were dug to reach these gravels were little more than glorified holes. Using picks and shovels with no ventilation and the ever-present danger of a cave-in, miners braved the mud and cold to reach the pay dirt. The gold-bearing gravel was then hauled to the surface in baskets or ore cars and then washed using large sluice boxes or those rocker boxes. While these methods may seem primitive, they produced vast amounts of gold. Now, we still do that today. That's called prospecting. Not primitive, it's still what we do today. The mines on the William Creek and the Caribou, of which the famous Never Sweat mine is best known, produced upwards of $25 million in gold. The search for gold was not confined to the mountains of BC. After the American Civil War, large numbers of prospectors moved north across the border to try their luck in Alberta. And there is gold in Alberta. The discovery of gold in the gravels of the North Saskatchewan River and Fort Edmonton first brought miners into the region in the 1860s. When word of this strike filtered back to Montana, eager prospectors headed north in search of a bonanza and a bathhouse. Unfortunately for these fortune seekers, Alberta's rivers yielded only extremely fine gold called flour gold, of which would take several hundred to equal the value of a cent. This initial failure to strike it rich did little to discourage fortune hunters, however, and for many years prospectors scoured the gravels of Alberta's rivers. The promise of rich placer deposits on the North Saskatchewan River may have brought Lemon and his partner Blackjack into the area around Fort Edmonton. All right, that concludes the introduction of the story. Stick around for the next video, and we're going to get into the first chapter. There's a few news articles that I want to go through with you, and we'll just continue it on. These chapters are quite long, so we'll just do one chapter a video. All right? Thanks for stopping by. Bye for now.